This time we have Blake Kashyap, and he has a very interesting presentation analyzing the Canary Islands.
Cool. Well, hi everybody. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for your time. My name is Blake Kashyap, and I did my research on an analysis of sustainability initiatives in the Canary Islands in order to uncover what the best practices are for the sustainable development of small island developing states. So just a little bit about what I'm on tap for y'all today. So we're going to go over the relevance of small island developing states, the theory that I used to evaluate the situation, what it means to create sustainability and energy, renewable energy in the Canary Islands, including the successes of the island of El Hierro, and that is that small little island on the bottom left down there. We're going to go over sustainable developmental integration in the Canary Islands, local business environments, the cultural dimension and that's importance, the tourism industry, and the impact that I hope to have from the study. So you may be wondering why small island developing states. I mean, they have an aggregate population of just about 65 million people, and this is less than 1% of the world population, so why do they deserve our attention? Well, they were recently designated by the United Nations as highly vulnerable regions. So this means they are disproportionately affected by natural disasters. So for reference, think about Puerto Rico, Hurricane Maria, and the recent Haitian earthquakes and how they devastated those communities. So the research is showing that as climate change intensifies, natural disasters will increase in both frequency and in magnitude. So we're seeing here there's a real need to make these island communities more resilient and more independent. So some shared conditions of these island states, they are geographically complex, both in their isolated locations and in their topographies. They're in a state of economic development, and they boast some of the most vibrant and vulnerable species that our planet has to offer. So some of these island states already have some sustainable aspirations. They have roadmaps such as the Pacific Roadmap for Sustainable Development and also Maldives 2030. But these action plans really have some significant barriers to their implementation, so that's kind of what my project is designed to help smooth out. So the theory that I used is stakeholder theory, and stakeholder theory asserts that the best, longest lasting, and most successful decisions are the ones that strive to do right by each of their stakeholders. And in this scenario, I grouped the stakeholders into 3 different subsets. So we have the residents on these islands, that's going to include both humans and wildlife. We have the factors at play in the business environment, so that's going to include the governing bodies of the Canary Islands, the businesses that conduct operations there, including public and private investors. And we also have those tasked with the implementation of the United Nations 2030 Agenda, and that's going to be policymakers in other island states and also those working for NGOs. So before tackling any problem that regards climate change, we first have to understand fully the importance of the energy industry. As you can see from the visual, energy makes up over 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions and is one of the main drivers of climate change. So we're seeing that these traditional energy sources, the oils, your natural gases, your fossil fuels, not only are they environmentally harmful, but they have been incredibly economically inefficient as well, especially in these small island developing states. So the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific found that not only has the reliance of island states on importing these oils and natural gases jeopardized their energy security, but it has also diminished their terms of trade because they're price takers on the international energy market. And this essentially means that since these island states don't have the economic power to create price fluctuations in this global energy market, they are kind of at the will. They have to take the prices that they're offered by their energy providers. And these prices can be unfavorable at times, but they're necessary. So when you combine these necessary, potentially unfavorable costs with the high transportation costs that it takes to get to their isolated locations, you really see how the terms of trade are diminished and the financial burden that it can put on these smaller economies. So when implementing renewable energy initiatives in these islands where the conditions are favorable for the production of wind, solar, and water energy, you can really see how this may go a long way in creating self-sufficiency for these island states. So the Canary Islands are among the pioneers when it comes to renewable energy integration integration in island communities. You can see from the graph there that they have more than doubled their share of renewable energy in electricity production since 2011. And they, in 2022, renewable energies provided over 20% of the electricity generated in the Canary Islands. And this is significant not only because that's, a good chunk, but it also is a year in which electricity demand rose by 6%. So it's significant that way because we see that the technology is able to handle this large electrical burden. The implementation of renewable energy has been environmentally effective in the Canaries as well. The usage of the replacement of fossil fuel-based plants with water, solar, and wind technologies has improved the water sustainability index in the Canaries. And this is big because the Canaries are a water-scarce region like so many other island states. And this is significant because this is significant, sorry, hold on. Well, I forgot why it's significant. But the Canary Islands have achieved a greenhouse gas reduction of over 1.3 tons of carbon dioxide per capita in these resident units that they have been placing an emphasis on powering with renewable energy. So now we're going to go to what I believe the Canary Islands' biggest success is, and that is the island of El Hierro. They have introduced the Corona del Viento power plant, and this is a wind and water-based energy plant that achieved the world record in 2018. It powered the entire island of El Hierro for 28 days straight. And this is something that no island has accomplished other than El Hierro, and no island, it was the first island in world history to accomplish this. So how did they do it? Well, obviously a project this big has to be funded. So this cost $110 total million, and they utilized the multilateral financing model. So 70% public financing and 30% private financing that came from a Spanish multinational electricity company. And this kind of provides a model for other affiliated island states. So, most island states aren't going to have $110 million just lying around. So the Canary Islands here are really a benefactor of their relationship with Spain and the European Union. But for unaffiliated island states, this private investment is something that they're going to have to lean into. But good news for them, the renewables market is rapidly growing. So we see that it's estimated to reach $2,450 billion US dollars by 2032, and it's growing at about a 9.5% compound annual growth rate. So this is an area that should be garnering more interest and attracting more funds as time goes on. And now the benefits from this power plant. So they saved on 20,000 tons of carbon dioxide per year from being emitted into the environment. They're saving 7,000 tons of diesel usage per year, and they are saving approximately $7,866,600 per year, not including shipping costs. A prominent economist was studying this situation, and he had a quote that said, we cannot predict what the price of oil is going to be in 20 years. But we do know that in 20 years, there will be wind on the island of El Hierro, that the price to produce an additional gigawatt will be zero. And that's kind of what I mean when I'm talking about securing energy security for these island states. So in 2022, the United Nations sent out a business consultation survey in Spain, and 196 companies voluntarily participated from the Canary Islands. And this business consultation was meant to measure the impact of sustainable development goals into business integration. So about 81% of the companies that responded claimed that they had some knowledge of the United Nations 2030 agenda, and 42% of them had an in-depth knowledge. Almost 23% of companies already had a corporate strategy aligned with sustainable development goals, and about 26% plan to. But what I thought was most interesting is that almost 80% of these companies found competitive advantages associated with sustainable development goal integration. And now we're going to go, about 50% of them said that they saw significant competitive advantages associated with them. And now we're going to go and explore a little talking about sustainable development. But it's crucial for really shaping resident attitudes towards sustainability, and the Canary Islands have had a great action plan when it comes to the cultural dimension. So a study in 2023 on Canary Islands residents that measured different psychosocial factors like perceived benefits, utility, and perceived risk found that solar energy was the most widely accepted source in the Canary Islands, and that information about renewables actually increased the positive emotions and acceptance correlated with these sources. On the contrary, information about non-renewable energies actually generated negative emotions and perceived risk, and it helped decrease the acceptance levels associated with those. And so this kind of shows that when the government of these islands prioritizes sustainability, these sentiments do end up trickling down to the residents as well. And now we're going to go into the tourism industry. So tourism and island states have a pretty complex relationship. So tourism is by far the largest industry in these island states. It makes up over 30% of their exports as opposed to the 5% that it represents on average for the rest of the world. But it's also a very polluted industry because of the transportation emissions and the excess waste generated by tourism activities. But now we're starting to see a new phenomenon among younger tourists called ecotourism. And this is essentially a type of environmentally responsible tourism that showcases natural beauty and emphasizes conservation. So a study done on tourists on a nature preserve in India found that young educated tourists actually indicated a higher level of awareness and concern for the environment. And that a similar study in Indonesia on Gen Z tourists found that greater awareness led to more positive attitudes towards ecotourism and conservation. And now both of these studies concluded that environmental knowledge actually strengthened the link between environmental attitude and green purchase intentions. So yet again, here we see environmental knowledge and awareness emerge as a leading factor towards shaping positive green attitudes. And so this could suggest that as environmental awareness initiatives increase in number and in potency and more young people are exposed to them, that ecotourism, green products, and green destinations may be the consumer preferences for future generations of tourists. And now for the impact that we hope to have from the study. So we know these island states face significant obstacles to the completion of their 2030 sustainability agendas. So we're just aiming to provide them with some evidence-based best practices from an island environment that work. So the ultimate goals are to sustainably develop these island states, to raise awareness to create a positive environmental impact, and ultimately achieve the UN 2030 agenda. So, thank you guys.
Very well done. I think in my case to introduce, I did not, and to get started, I did not introduce Dr. Douglas Carter as Blake's mentor and advisor.
So the Canary Islands, they're part of Spain.
Yeah, they're like a little archipelago right north of Morocco. But yeah, they're governed by Spain there, so.
Do you feel like having the government be on the mainland, do you feel like that's helped with investment into sustainability?
I think definitely. I think it definitely has, especially being part of the European Union as well, because they have consistently been among the more environmentally progressive, large government organizations. So I'd say in this situation, it definitely has helped, but I still think some of the successes here are translatable to independent island states as well.
What do you think are some of the contributing factors to some islands not participating or being as aware of the UN 2030 budget?
Well, a lot of it is because a lot of them just don't have reliable access to electricity, so they aren't as globalized or integrated into the global world. We have island states like Haiti, Kiribati, and the Solomon Islands, and in those countries, less than 50% of the populations have reliable access to electricity. So hard to spread awareness there because they're not as connected as the rest of the world. So that's part of where external investment may help bring them up to speed. Yes.
Do you think that an increase in eco-tourists may create a problem for them in terms of providing energy?
Of course, I think they need to have the electrical capabilities to provide for everybody there. But I think eco-tourists in specific are more concerned with natural beauty and the conservation aspect. So I think they'll have less of a environmental footprint than typical tourists per se. So it would take, I think, less, like if you were going to put a number on electrical power per tourist, I'd say it takes less to fund these eco-tourist activities.
Okay, thank you.
What caused you to study the Canary Islands?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always been really interested in sustainability and sustainable development. I've had classes in CSR. I took a social entrepreneurship class too that I really liked. So that's just kind of always been like a passion calling for me. And when I was brainstorming different ideas or different places to the research, Dr. Carter helped me out because he has some experience working in the region and pointing me towards the Canary Islands. And once I started researching and found out a little bit more, it was just kind of like, you know, what else can I find?
I think so. Yes. It's a budget issue, right? So this has been a tremendous honor for me. This is my first honors thesis. So I tend to get, for those of you who know me, I'm not an emotional person. These things do make me terribly emotional, so I apologize. But I want to thank actually our friends and colleagues from the Holy Cross Institute for joining us today because you've been very instrumental in helping us get Blake excited about this project and giving him his little help in and making him feel very comfortable within the Institute. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. The Canary Islands are very important because we were looking initially at the equatorial islands and because of the wind and the sun, right? So as a way of starting. And the water issue that popped up on the slide was really the fact of the sustainability of potable water with the increase in tourism. And in particular, the Canary Islands, the members of the European Union who are retiring to the EU, to the Canaries, because the climate is just so absolutely perfect for people, increases the population. And because they're island nation, they don't have access to a lot of additional potable water. So they actually who's not willing it to happen. So, and there's over 300 desalinization plants within the series of the Canary Islands. And there's actually a way, I was working at a previous institution with the way of capturing the energy from the waves to generate the energy for the desalinization plants, so they're completely carbon neutral. And the Canary Islands are really, because of their association with Spain and the EU in particular, have the funding to continue working towards that goal. So I want to thank Blake for choosing me, and as I stole him here, and I want to welcome his family, his parents and grandparents for traveling in from California and El Paso